Hello again, everyone. You're joining us for another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. My name is Jeff Mix. I'm head of content and research. My guest today is Diluks De Silva of Compliance Architects. Some of you who have been watching this channel over the years know I get to talk with compliance architects a couple times a year. Usually it's Jack Garvey. Most recently it was Teresa Gorecki. I actually use those interviews as my example when I prep other people, like this is how good it can be. And they actually both said they don't want to do it this time. They want me to speak to Diluks to put him on the spot a little bit. Diluks has a background in industry, most recently with Novartis, but about 30 years in industry, worked all across the spectrum from QC right through to cell and gene therapies and all points in between. I am so excited for this conversation. Diluks, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I know we could talk about any number of things, but I think probably the top of mind one that I want to start with is talent. I think every company right now is struggling to get the people they need, whether it's to attract talent, hold on to the talent they've got, develop the talent they're going to need for the future. And I know your organization is a big part of that conversation. What is it that when you have conversations in this space with people, what is it that you're saying?
Yeah, so I think in pharmaceutical space, talent has been a key pillar to everything that we do. And this whole space ended up changing completely when we got into personalized medicine. Now, it was no longer having the pool of people or talent that we have in our operations. They had to be different. They have to be different breed of individuals. This was no longer big, huge piece of machinery, equipment that we are using. Automation was available, but not to the same level as what we had in the space of biomanufacturing or cell culture manufacturing. So we had to start to kind of think a little bit about what are the type of people that we want to bring into our plants and operations, and the skill sets and the education that they come with it, because it was no longer pushing buttons, for lack of better terms, right? It was a little bit of these thought individuals, talented people, but it's in an operator or a QC setting. The analytics were not as simple as it used to be. They're complex. So you have to have a higher skilled individuals that we had to bring in to be able to do what we would consider in traditional form, manufacturing operations. So this took a lot of thinking and a lot of planning and training, but not only just looking at those things from a training perspective, how do we build that? How do we build that as we grow this type of business? So working with colleges, working with career centers to be able to really go ahead and say, look, this is what we are looking for. How can we be a part of that entire journey of that student or that program, a biotech program, right? So this was something that we really had to dig deep into understanding and how to put that in place.
And I think also it's worth saying that the industry itself is rapidly expanding. So it's not even a question of meeting today's needs. It's, there's going to be 100 companies we've never heard of 10 years from now that are doing amazing work. They all need talented people, in the pipeline now so that they can hold senior positions down the road too.
Absolutely, because it is really imperative that we have the right type of talent that grow into the senior leadership roles. Now, being a senior leader in this advanced therapeutics is very different than to be a senior leader in traditional pharmaceutical space, right? Because the purpose of what we do is very different. At the same time, we are also dealing with some really new technologies. So it's no longer an operator and a QC team with an SOP that's been followed. There are a lot of automation and new technology that gets built. So we're also looking at leaders that are able to adapt to these very highly changing environments, not just following the standard path. And from a regulatory point of view, it's also in the same space. So we have to be able to have senior leaders that are open to having discussions with the teams and motivating them through different paths, right? At the same time, senior leaders that are willing to and brave enough to have those discussions with the regulators in quality, in compliance, right? To go ahead and explain and have that open conversation of how do we go ahead and bring this type of product into the market.
Now, would you say it's sort of we are taking all good options space, because you can't find all the people you need within existing biopharma companies? although you need some people with those backgrounds. There's other manufacturing sectors. There's people still in school who are trying to choose, how are you getting the pipeline filled that you need to fill?
So that's a pretty tough question, right? Because when you're really thinking about it, you're orchestrating an entire next generation of leaders, right? So I think some of the ways that you could, if I were to go ahead and build that, right? What I would do is that I would start to go ahead and introduce this idea of what does it mean at the very early stage at the universities and colleges, right? Because manufacturing and QC is not really sexy, right? And how do you go ahead and make that very exciting and interesting for them? Because if you take a look at the talent pool today, everybody wants to be a VP tomorrow, right? That doesn't work that way. So you have to go through, and if you consider you and I, right, we have been in the industry for a long time, and we have gone through so many different steps to the place where we have gotten today. So how do we then go ahead and consider these new, kids, the next generation, and how do you excite them in that space, and how do we then bring them into a corporation or a company and groom them in that new space that they're in, cell and gene or advanced therapeutics, and how do we then take them through those leadership fundamentals and grow them within that environment, right?
I think one of the things that I want to do when we talk about the next generation is get into some of the specifics that they're going to have to grapple with, because that might help us brainstorm some ideas here. And why don't we talk about manufacturing and data analytics, which again, when you're in college may not sound like the most sexy option, but there's also a lot of innovation happening. There is momentum and change, and the idea of they can get in at the ground floor and actually build it. Why don't we get into a little bit about what is going on in life sciences when it comes to manufacturing and analytics?
Sure. So today, when it comes to the manufacturing space, it's no longer following an SOP, following a process, and moving pieces around, valves and other things, right? It's all about there's a significant amount of automation that's built into these plants now. When it comes to the cell and gene space, we are trying to go ahead and automate more and more and more into it because of the sensitivity of that entire growth cycle of a cell and gene therapy. So in this type of space, we are really trying to understand, and that we talk about talent or bringing in expertise. So there's a lot of automation built in, either via manufacturing automation system, GE automation systems. So it's no longer trying to be able to go ahead and have your hands work. It's more or less your fingers working to be able to adjust the environment that they're going to be working in manufacturing and in QC.
And I can also see one of the things that might inspire the next generation to get interested in the life sciences is there's something really exciting and new happening in medicine.
Yeah.
And they are in a position to be the people who make that difference and change people's lives. And I think that connecting those dots along with the technical challenges of it and the idea of actually innovating the next thing could be very exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely, because there's a big difference between having 1 million tablets formed, right, or 1 million vials filled, versus you knowing that you are making a product for an individual. So there is a significant amount of fulfillment that you have, right? And that is going to an individual. So here, the purpose is really real, because there is, on the other side of this specific batch, you have a person, an individual, right? One day that could be your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, right? It's somebody that is there. So absolutely, I fully agree with you, because there is such deep-rooted purpose in this new space of advanced therapeutics, because it's no longer you get to feel it. When I worked in the industry, prior to joining Compliance Architects, my biggest happiness in coming to work every day was the purpose. I knew every day there was a patient waiting on the other end, right? And my organizations, quality and QC, they knew that what they did meant a lot, because somebody's waiting on the other end. But that also put significant amount of pressure into an organization. Personal pressure, right? Because now you know that you are holding in your hands somebody's life. So we had to also overcome, honestly, from a psychological point of view of our associates, as well as our operators, QC people, that how do we allow them to do their best at work? Mistakes do happen, right? So mistake proofing that environment, helping them to relieve some of that stress by bringing some automation into it, bringing in MES or labial LIMS into place to reduce that stress that they have of knowing that they are assaying or they are manufacturing a product for an individual. And this was a very big learning that I had coming from biologics, because there we were dealing with fermenters. If something bad happened, we restarted. Here, you got no choice. There is no restart, right? So it has to be right. And then how do you deal with it when something does go wrong? Because then everybody in that operational unit knows that patient is no longer going to get that product. So emotionally, physically, mentally, and physically, that's a hard place to be. Right?
Yeah.
That's a very hard place to be.
I think it's also a really interesting time for the idea of bringing automation into ATMP manufacturing.
Absolutely.
The idea of the people who are going through all of the steps in their career to bring them to this time and place didn't do it to walk around with a clipboard and take manual readings and put it into Excel and then stare at the numbers. A machine can do all of that faster, and it frees them to do the troubleshooting and the innovating and the getting better all the time.
Yes.
Part of the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And innovation and continuous process improvement, right? Continuous process improvement mindset is absolute must in this new generation of manufacturing operations, right? Because you can't be happy with what we are doing, what is there today, right? So you really want to make a difference in this space as companies, as individuals. You have to always be in that space of uncertainty and knowledge seeking, right? Because that'll allow you to innovate. That'll allow you to go ahead and have that question with your supervisors or with your leadership or with your management team and say, listen, what can we do different? What can we do better to make the life of our people, our manufacturing operations, as well as what can we do to make the life of the patients better, right? Deal with the medicines faster.
In my conversations with your colleagues in the past, I have often sort of marveled that your organization is sort of a touch point throughout the industry of we're having a problem with this or a challenge with this, or there's an opportunity that we're not properly grasping, and they can actually seek your advice because you've worked in the space and you know some of the options. When you look at some of these challenges that we've been talking about, imagine it's one of your clients that's come to you and said, we want to get serious about letting our talent do more or improving automation. What is some of the advice that you have for them to help them move the ball forward?
So I think the first thing is to ask that question, right? And having that thought process with them, because that goes a long way. My advice to them is that as we deal with some of our clients and they come to us to provide some insights into it, of course, my advice is, do you understand the basics, right? Do you understand the basics of what you're doing today before we move on to automating, making it better? Because that's fundamentally very important, right? Because you cannot put paper to glass, right? So it's easy for us to say, look, we're going to go ahead and automate everything. We worked with paper for years. We just want, electronic batch records or ELIMS. That doesn't typically work well, because if you were to just kind of take paper to glass, right, and most of the time you're going to find issues and problems. But first we would want to make sure that the processes and the programs that they have are scalable into electronic formats or into automation systems, right? And if you were to take that type of stepwise approach, we can be very successful. In fact, that's one of the things that I did in my past is within cell and gene space, we did not want to go in to automation system till we understood clearly that we have repeatability in our manufacturing batch records. We have repeatability in our QC batch records. We understood that the operators could be trained properly to be able to follow what was in our current analytical methods. So by understanding that, doing that, then we were able to go and say, look, we can do it manually this way. Now, how can we go and take it to the next level?
I sometimes try to put myself in the position of one of the delegates of our show. So in this case, it would be a biopharmaceutical manufacturing executive, maybe in the tech ops space. I can only come up with so many good ideas in the four walls of my office. And I think your organization is such a good partner to bounce ideas off of, generate that piece of innovation that doesn't necessarily involve me reinventing the wheel. You guys have a wealth of experience to draw upon. How do you get started? What does the working relationship look like? How can companies leverage what you guys have to offer in an effective way?
Great question. So yes, I mean, one of the key things with our organization is that we have worked in many different modalities throughout the existence of our company. And at the same time, we have experts that have significant industry expertise that have joined compliance architects to be able, that's what from a consulting point of view. So we consider with any project that we work on, first of all, is it a good fit? Is it a fit, and are we able to deliver what the client is asking for? That is absolutely important for us, right? Second thing is, when we are in engagement with you, we are not engaging in a short-term venture. We want to ensure that whatever solutions that we provide, that it is scalable. It is scalable and it is future-proof, right? One of the main reasons why, when I left industry and joined Compliance Architects, one of the main reasons why I wanted to join them is that fact, is the engagements that I've had with them was the fact that it was solution-oriented help support. And that's different. That's different from everybody else. So our engagement model and how Jack and the team has put this together is that we are solution-oriented individuals. You ask us to come and engage with you, we are going to go ahead and stand by you and help the organization to come with unique solutions to be able to address any issues that we have.
And I know just how wide a range of offerings you have, and it feels like me asking, well, what would you do in this case, or what would you do in that case? I can't hypothetically ask a question for every person who's been listening to this. Okay. For people who do want to start that conversation and bring their own challenges to you, what's the best way to reach you?
So I think the best way is through our website, compliancearchitects.com, right? You can reach us. You can send us an email or inquiry. You can also reach me personally, Diluks De Silva. I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me that way as well.
Okay, well, I encourage everyone to visit that website, and I also really thank you for making your LinkedIn contact available. I certainly enjoyed chatting with you, and I think many people who've been listening to this might also want to say, okay, well, I do have some more questions about talent or QC, or, I mean, you've worked in so many different verticals. You're a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for your time today.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
You've been listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. I've been Jeff Mix. Let's do it again soon.